Absolutely brilliant. And so without further ado, thank you everybody. And let me share my screen and get started on this. Please tell me if you can see it. Yeah? Everyone can see the screen?
Yeah, we can.
Fantastic, great. So how do we get to that $5 trillion economy, even now post-COVID-19? And I just want to walk it on a very quick philosophical level. I'm trying to write a book on this. It would take me about 3 to 4 hours to get through the entire thing. I have 10 minutes. So I'm going to rush through the fundamental concepts. And hopefully the goal is to get you to open your mind and open your imagination more than anything on this. So the first thing is, there's a simple rule of all marketplace economies, right? It's a basic rule. Resources end up where they are most productively used, guided by the invisible hand of the market, okay? This is not an econ lecture, but I think all of us can agree that this is one of the fundamentals. But now, the invisible hand only works when there is a large number of transactions leading to the establishment of a true marketplace. The invisible hand doesn't work if you have one transaction here, two transactions here. Only when you have a lot of transactions, you're actually able to get a full true marketplace there. And that leads me to my very basic point. The easier it is to transact, the more transactions, can I request everyone to mute themselves perhaps? That might help. Thank you. The easier it is to transact, the more transactions, there's faster and hopefully better, because I know there's an argument on this, allocation of resources. So what happens when it is easier to do transactions? You have a faster compounded momentum of the economy, which leads to higher growth, making even double digits of GDP possible. Once again, request if people could mute, if I could request the host to mute everybody. Manu, you have to add this time back to me.
Ajay, please mute everybody.
And I will unmute myself. Thank you. So faster compounded momentum of the economy leads to higher growth, making even double-digit numbers possible. Resources change hands quickly and arrive at those who are willing to put them to faster or work faster or consume them. Think of land, right? If we can keep transacting land, the same piece of land, instead of being sold once a year or once in 5 years, is sold 10 times a year. Right? And it finally goes to either a developer or an end user who is able to build something and to consume it rather than this asset to just sit there. Same thing for inventory, same thing for anything that is produced. Innovation and research thrives faster as day-to-day execution is super fast. Chemicals are bought faster, labs are run more efficiently, contracts are given quicker. And of course, more data is generated and iterated about the market and the consumer. So you're not waiting for data to understand where you're going. More jobs and better employment. Hiring is easier. If you're easier to transact, you can hire people, fire people. People can get consulting jobs. There is this very nice interplay. And there's stronger bonds and links and reputations are built among actors. Good actors rise faster. They make their reputations because they're able to deliver on multiple transactions. And poor actors are removed faster because it becomes very easy. If you have 100 transactions versus 3 transactions, you understand who is doing a great job very quickly and who's doing a poor job very quickly. And of course, my big point to the government, more tax and revenue for the government, which can be spent on social services. So my key point for this presentation, to reach 5 trillion ASAP, we need to make transactions faster, easier, and cheaper. And currently in India, we are doing a terrible, terrible job of this. But I'm convinced COVID-19 can now enable this. With very limited fiscal room, structural innovative reform should be to be the go-to for thriving, because you can't spend $2 trillion. We can barely spend 20, 30, 40 billion dollars, right? So you have to have structural reform. And I think this is an amazing silver lining that the government can actually make transactions easier. Now, I'm not going to spend time on this, but all of you know India is blessed, especially compared to others. Our resources, our people, our institutions, energy. Every time I think of India and I compare it to a whole bunch of other nations who are struggling, we are really, really blessed. We have the potential. We have so much that is going for us, and it just needs the right economy, the right ecosystem to unlock it. So I'm just going to run through this, right? Very briefly, what ease of transaction reforms look like, just to kick it off. Taxation, for example, we have 29 states, 9 union territories, and that means 114 GST numbers. That means 1,368 GST filings per national company per year, right? And we have 5+ rates, including cesses and all. One nation, one number. Imagine how fast transactions would happen, right? Full coverage of GST, including petrol, alcohol, everything. A single payroll tax. No, this ESI, PF allowances this. You hire a person, you pay a tax on that, a simple payroll tax. That's it. You're done. Your codification of precedents into tax laws, right? So you're not going back and checking 20 courts. The law matches what the reality is. Remove all this TDS, TCS, advanced tax. In 2020, the government can manage cash flows better than the private industry. There is no need for the industry to do all of this. Elimination of all deductions at standards. And if you've paid GST, no questions asked. And the big reform, a closed loop. Merge the payroll tax, direct tax, and indirect tax for input credit. You get this beautiful closed loop in the formal economy. There is no leakages, and transactions are easier and faster because all data is perfectly connected. Let's look at real estate, right? A single unit of measurement across the country. Did you know in Punjab, for example, there is a rural marla and an urban marla? And those two are completely different measurements. Every state has its own unique local system of measurements. Standard development path. A developer in one state doesn't know how to do it in the other because it's a completely different pathway. Elimination of stamp duty. This is a big one. Focus on capital gains. Let's try to sell land, sell projects as many times as possible within the same year, within 2 years, within 3 years, to bring it to the end user as quickly as possible. 5%, 7% stamp duties just creates black money and it slows down transactions. A digitalized encrypted GPS-based land system, something China has done, an ownership database. Now this has to be state level, but it can be a distributed database all across the country, one language, English, translated down to local, and one development standard. What does it mean if I have this permit? It means very different things in Bombay, it means Delhi, it means Pune, it means Assam, right? One language for this. One-time access code for due diligence. So if I want to sell something, I can give somebody an access code, they look through it, and guess what? They've done my due diligence. No more 3 months, 6 months of due diligence. And the controversial one, if you can qualify a legitimate disputed land, auction it within 3 years, put that money in the escrow, bring that land back into play. So much of our land is locked into 30-year disputes, 20-year disputes. Trust and contracts. We are ranked number 163 in the world in contracts. It takes 1,445 days to do a contract, and it costs about 31%, World Bank figures. We need a private encrypted online registration of contracts and the courts. These should be able to, because we can't even agree if a contract was signed, right? We need a new body which focuses on creating domestic licensed escrow company to bridge trust gaps. So I can't trust you, you can't trust me. We'll use a third-party escrow, which is licensed by the government and regulated, who we both can trust. Use local credits. We do it for international stuff. This should really happen. Trade finance, local LC document verification. And fast-track commercial courts with no further ability to appeal if both sides have agreed in advance. How many court cases go on because they keep appealing, and this can happen even above arbitration. Again, codification of precedents into law. And of course, smart contracts for digital data. This is very obvious. I have a few minutes left, maybe a minute or two. Similarly, we can do e-governance and e-verification. Why is every state working on their own platform, paying Infosys, TCS, this, that, etc.? We should have one open source platform created for all states and then modified by them down locally for states, how they want to do it down to sector. We need national standards and protocol for all government documentation. Why is a birth certificate in Delhi different from Bengal, a marriage certificate here? Have a codified standard. They can change how it looks up to local things. They can change the language, but at least national standards should be there. Again, e-verification of government issued documents. Why do I have to get notarized, 3 copies, true attested, all of this? Have a government document. I should be able to provide a verification pin to somebody and they should be able to go and verify. This is very important, but to protect it, we have to have a log available for access to every private file with the government. This should be my right. eKYC for all companies and bodies, bank accounts, trade transactions, this. Give your eKYC number, give your passcode for a one-time use, let them do the KYC. Why does everybody have to reauthorize our vendors, redo KYC on all of our vendors? Typing centers. Standardized and available. Now, this is something that we've tried eChopal in various countries and all, but I look at the UAE for inspiration, because this is all very nice for tech literate people. But if we can start regulating and licensing down to people, I think this can work very, very well. This is something that means that you have these small shops in every colony, in every district, where a person can go for a standardized price, 50 rupees to get this government service, 100 rupees, but they're properly audited, licensed, and they have access to these government services, which they can do on behalf of users. And the government should never ask for documentation it already has. You know, I used that online passport e-digital locker. It was fantastic. I don't know why the government hasn't made mandatory. Why for avail a government service, I have to get documentation that the government has given me already, get that notarized, self-attested, thapad 5 times, copies in triplicates. Now, I'm going to end here because I'm out of time. These are just the tip of the iceberg. Most of these initiatives are pending with the government. They have been going on for 6 to 7 years. There are white papers. There's a lot of internal stuff. I think COVID-19 allows them to say, let's stop discussing in circles. We have the technology. We have the internal papers. The working groups have met, and it's time to implement these. So to get to 5 trillion, we need to make the market work for us, not against us. And the market will only work for us is if we make transactions faster, easier, and cheaper. I think everything else in terms of long-term economics and business and ease of doing business is all secondary. If we can just make transactions faster, easier, and cheaper, instead of taking 6 months to do a transaction, if I can do it in 6 days, we will see true GDP growth actually take off, large number of companies, huge expansion of the formal workforce, creation of millions of jobs, and of course, the double-digit GDP growth we need to get to 5 trillion. It's not going to happen if it's, no matter how much money is pumped in, no matter how much investment comes into India, no matter how many new entrepreneurs, we will never get to 5 trillion in 5-6 years if our transaction levels are still moving at the extremely slow pace that they already do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I will end on that.
Yes, we have questions. A question from Paula Auntie. She says, how much of this is actually
So I think
possible?
let's start, tell everybody to post their questions on the chat so we can start taking.
Yes, yeah, please post your questions on the chat. Another uncle, short comments. How much of this is actually possible? What is the low hanging fruit? COVID has seen the most efficient part of the government. Will this actually bring the systemic change that is required?
So the good news is almost everything that I have put online is not new. These are not radical new ideas. These are things that have been proposed time and time again. There are working groups in the government who have worked on it. For example, tax reform. You know, the Niti Aayog has papers on this. They have had 2-3 tax working groups who have proposed very similar things. The technology behind, so for example, one GSTN number, right? The GSTIN organization already exists. It is a trivial thing for them to say, just tell us you bought from here, sold to here, and they can do it. The real problem is the political will. And I'm hoping, hoping that under COVID-19 this bold agenda that they have to do, because they don't have the fiscal space, they can at least try to do these things. Similar stuff like real estate, it's a political will. Eliminating stamp duty, they can do today. They have deferred stamp duty already, right? So all of this thing can happen bit by bit. So I think a lot of it is practical. There's a lot of open source projects on e-governance, for example. The government already has a digital wallet for all their documents. No one's actually using it. The government itself is not using it, right? So it's more about them taking a strong stance and treating it like a revolution rather than saying we're getting there. How many of you have got official government notices from Gmail accounts? it's a one-time heavy lift they have to do. And if they can lock down India for 15 days, they can do demonetization. There is no shortage of bold steps the government can do, quite frankly, if given the right spin and the right political motivation.
Perfect. Paula, you wanna say the question you had?
I think Jinesh had something. Similar question. Superb idea, radical long-term, too much systemic inertia, which is the one of these that we might bring to bear in the next 2 to 5 years. I think definitely on the tax reform side, I think there is definitely a lot of push there where internally already the tax committees have pretty much given the recommendations. And I think the government is searching for the right time when it's politically acceptable to do so. I think those are going to see it. Stuff like land records, most states, including, for example, Delhi, have moved to some form of digital land records. They're giving out cards and all. The problem is national standards. And I think low-hanging fruit is that, it's not hard to get all the states together. We did for GST and said, look, can we just adopt some national standards in how we talk about certain things, right? Whether it's documentation, all these are not hard. ISO has already got most of this settled internationally. And most of it is cut, copy, paste, and localization from India. So I think at least the standards, the metric systems, all of this is something that is actually possible in 2 to 5 years. Obviously, the political will to do it has to exist. And that strong federal push, I think the way we did GST proves that states can work together with the center to achieve a common objective, particularly if they think it's going to either improve their tax situation, which I think a lot of these will because of the high speed of transaction, but also in terms of, post COVID-19, just having employment generated in their states.
Aditya, you can take one more question from the chat. I think Sandeep had a question. Sandeep uncle had a question. Siddharth had a question.
I'll take Sandeep ji's question on this. It's the easier one. Sorry, Siddharth ji. That's a very long answer for yours. And see, I think there is a huge inertia in the bureaucracy. I think I think there was a hope, maybe 5-6 years ago, that they were going to bring in a lot of external people to bring this about. If you talk to the bureaucracy themselves, I think they will tell you exactly what's wrong. And I am hoping that because of this crisis, rather than having a so slow boiling frog, which was the Indian economy, we would have reached here where we are today in 3 years' time, the way we were going. I think fundamentally things were changing. And I think this crisis, I hope, is a shock enough system to everybody to prove a few things. Digital works. My favorite slide, and I credit Ashutosh Gupta, the CEO of LinkedIn India, for this. Who is leading your digital transformation? Your CEO, your CTO, or is COVID-19 leading your digital transformation, right? So a lot of this stuff involves breaking down regulatory barriers. And I hope this time has proven to the bureaucracy that, yes, you can do a lot of stuff without needing elaborate regulatory tools, when a basic framework of regulations efficiently enforced will do the job.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Aditya ji. And we will go from